The last 30 or 40 years, capitalism has taken this extreme form. And a lot of it goes back to the economist Milton Friedman from the Chicago School and Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher and others buying into these policies that really encourage people to take on huge amounts of debt, encourage privatization, smaller government supposedly, although bigger military, so actually the government spending goes up. Deregulation, getting rid of rules that govern the people who run our institutions, especially our corporations. It's as though we suddenly are supposed to believe that the human beings who sit at the top of corporations don't need to be regulated. They're some sort of gods.
You have to bail us out. We need money. If you don't give us the money, the whole thing goes down. And what are you going to do with millions and tens of millions of people who have lost everything in their bank account? You will have a revolution on your hands. So fork over the money.
It was the head of the Federal Reserve Bank, Alan Greenspan, who after 9/11 slashed interest rates to encourage lending. Bankers needed new participants to keep cash flowing into a system that had become a global pyramid scheme. All this newly created money entered the housing market and created unprecedented inflation. House prices rose and rose. New mothers were forced back into the workplace to service huge home loans, and the Anglo-American dream became all about land speculation.
The housing market in the West isn't about ownership. The housing market in the West, because it's the only way ordinary people can get ahead, and ordinary people can't get ahead but by wages. What we've created is a mass bubble economics around housing. That sucks in a huge amount of capital, takes capital for genuine innovations in the economy, and puts it into a speculative use that has no genuine productive outcome.
It's interesting, if you talk to people in Germany, for example, they don't see a connection between owning a piece of property and being inclined towards being democratic. There's lots of people who rent their housing there, and they're perfectly comfortable with that arrangement. But it is true that in somewhat different contexts, both Mr. Reagan and Mrs. Thatcher pushed for more people to own housing. And actually, this is part of the problem, because if you push people to buy housing before they're ready, and if you push very dubious loans on them, and they don't understand what they get themselves into, you can have huge adverse repercussions, exactly what led to, in part, the subprime housing crisis in the United States. That's not anything to do with democracy, that's just a bad economic idea. The financial sector has acquired enormous power, partly through political contributions, so buying favors, but mostly through ideological control, convincing people that finance is good, more finance is better, and unregulated finance without limit is best.
It's not a reflection of good democracy when a company, a group of companies, an industry, says our interests are more important than the national interest.
An advanced oligarchy, in the sense that its main mechanism of control, if you like, is through convincing people that you really need, for example, the 6 biggest banks in the United States in the particular form they exist today, with the very light level of regulation. And if you don't have them, if you try to change that, all kinds of awful things will happen. And this is not really blackmail. I mean, it sounds like blackmail, but they convince you it's not blackmail, it's just that's the way the world is. There's nothing you can do about it. Oh my goodness, you just have to cooperate with them. It's very clever.
And I just think it's disgusting that people have lost their homes, they lost their jobs, they can't pay their mortgages from bankers who made a big mistake and then paid enormous bonuses. I'm sorry, that is simply wrong. And I can't understand why we are not more vociferous about that.
When rich people tell you that they specifically have to be rich through these egregious rip-off mechanisms, that's just self-serving propaganda, and it should be disregarded. It is true that when you organize human society, some people get ahead and some people struggle. That's a natural mechanism. But saying, oh, we've got to have inequality, therefore Goldman Sachs must be organized along the following lines, that's a complete non sequitur.
At what juncture, at what point does morality enter into the economic calculus? In a way, many people think that Adam Smith gave us a free pass a way not to think about morality. Because what Adam Smith said was that individuals in the pursuit of their self-interest are led as if by an invisible hand to the general well-being of society. Now let me make it clear, Adam Smith didn't really say that. That is to say, Adam Smith was very much aware that businesses, when they got together, conspired against the public interest, raised prices. He was aware of monopoly. He was aware of the importance of education that the private sector couldn't provide. So he himself was aware of all the limitations, but his latter-day descendants have forgotten all those caveats because our political processes are badly flawed. They're badly flawed because of the dependence on lobbyists, on campaign contributions. So that's why, my view, and a view I think of a lot of people, is that we have to restructure our political processes to give more voice to the ordinary citizen and less voice to the interest group, to the moneyed groups, to those who have taken such a large role in shaping our tax code, our regulatory regulations, and so forth.